We are following breaking news. A Monmouth County jury finding 21-year-old Liam McAtasney guilty of murder of Sarah Stern. Let's go right now to Freehold, where attorneys are holding a press conference.
We could not be more proud about today's result and the work of our trial team APs, Assistant Prosecutor Megan Doyle and Assistant Prosecutor Christopher Decker. Their tireless pursuit of justice in this case was really awe-inspiring to us, and we are incredibly proud of them and their hard work. They've worked long and hard on this case, and it's been a really long road. We also want to thank our entire investigative team who've worked tirelessly since December of 2016 to seek justice for Sarah and her family. In addition to our own detectives and staff, we owe special thanks to the Neptune City and Neptune Township Police Departments, Belmar Police Department, the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office, New Jersey State Police, Belmar Water Rescue Team, United States Coast Guard, and the area network of shore water emergency responders. We also want to thank the jurors for their 8 weeks of service in a very, very long case. This civic duty does not come without personal sacrifice, and we thank them for their obligation and fulfilling their obligation to serve. Most importantly, we extend our continued condolences to the entire Stern family. Although the trial is over, we understand that for the Stern family, this never really ends. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Stern, who has a few remarks to make.
I just wanted to thank the press for their courtesy and their long-standing, coming out and being here. The most important thing is to get justice for Sarah. She was a great kid and never should have ended like this. Thank everybody. Thank you.
If you have any questions for our trial team APs, Megan Doyle and Chris Decker are here, and you can feel free to ask.
Megan.
Sure.
What stood out to you about this trial as you look back on all of these weeks, as far as experience, difficulty, anything like that?
So I think the thing that stood out for me the most is the courage that some of our witnesses had, specifically Anthony Curry. I think that's unique for, speaking for both Chris and I, to have somebody who really doesn't have a dog in the fight to cooperate with us for nothing. The other part was the Stern family. They sat here every day. And as all of you know, some days there was nothing that went on. And they were always supportive, always thanking us. And that's, I think, too, something that's unique. We don't always get that type of support.
How was it during the jury deliberations? I mean, was it nerve-wracking?
It always is. God.
Waiting for a jury to come back is always not an easy thing for prosecutors, especially when you're asking a group of 14 people, or ultimately 12 people, to convict someone, especially so young, of a crime like murder. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. You could obviously see that from the jury's reaction, I think, on the way out. But we appreciate all the time, the effort they put into this. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, justice was served for Mr. Stern and the Stern family, who's been here day in and day out, been so patient with everything, with us, with our detectives. So it's never an easy thing, but you just have to understand that we have to be patient because it's not an easy thing to do.
Chris, Megan, question for both of you guys. We, over the course of the last 6-7 weeks, we saw you both at times get extremely passionate in the courtroom, and obviously you've been working on this case for a very long time and are invested. How emotional was it for you to not only watch the Stern family, but to be involved in this case and to listen to the sometimes gruesome and bone-chilling things over again be repeated in court?
We both talked about this a lot. We've watched that consensual recording probably no less than 100 times. Watching it in court in the context of everything else that was going on, and watching the jury react to it, watching and listening to the people in the back start to react. Sorry. Channel 4's out.
Sorry, Brian.
I'll put 4 low.
But I think that was very hard for both of us because it was the first time we looked at it almost like you guys did, seeing it and appreciating how heinous it was, and then watching him not react to it was, I think, difficult for both of us.
What did you see in that? What did you see in that confession, in that videotape, in Liam McAtasney?
I don't like to speculate about who a person ultimately is. I think everyone saw the evidence in this case. You've all watched the video. I think you could draw those conclusions for yourself. But ultimately, as a prosecutor, I think what Megan and I saw was corroboration. We saw that everything that he said was corroborated by, the words of the co-defendant, the physical evidence, the videotape surveillance. So that's really the way we had to look at it as objectively as possible, try to separate ourselves from the emotion of it as much as we could.
Right. And watching it in court, I think it was hard because he laughed through most of it, and there was no emotion from him, where there's 14 people sitting in that jury box who know nothing about this case except what they're learning over these last 8 weeks, and they're having emotional reactions to it. I think that was, as prosecutors, it does make you angry, that there's no remorse, there's nothing, and he was so dismissive of what he did.
And that brings up, can I ask this question? You guys will probably know a lot of these kind of murder cases. When you rank this guy compared to other ones, would you say he's the most heinous you've ever seen, or what would you think?
I think he's the most...
I think that's a question for other people to determine. We both handle cases with people that have done really bad things. I mean, I think what we had in this case speaks for itself, and to try to rank this person amongst others, I mean, every murder case we handle is terrible and it's horrible in its own way.
Megan and Chris, for the last 2 1/3 years, this case has thrust the eyes of not only us here in New Jersey, on our hometowns where we grew up, where we live, where we enjoy the summers of the Jersey Shore, but also the entire country and even international. Behind you, there's a man who has been a pillar of strength throughout this entire ordeal. What do you want to say to the way Mr. Michael Stern and the Stern family represented themselves when all of our eyes were on them in a most difficult time of their lives?
I think he showed how much he represented his daughter, because this wasn't about him. It was about Sarah, and it was about getting justice for Sarah. So I don't want to speak for him, but I think that gave him the strength to be able to sit in court and listen to what he said about his daughter and how he treated her. And I think that was what the focus was for him, at least for my conversations and my observations, that he made this about his daughter and not about himself, which as a parent is very admirable. I don't know if I would have been able to do it.
Mr. Stern, can we ask you how you felt putting your faith in the state and in these two prosecutors and this team, and how it kind of felt to, relinquish control in the fact that this is such a personal issue for you, and to kind of, hope that they, are as skilled as they come off to be and do the right thing?
Very stressful. The entire ordeal, very stressful. I'm just looking forward to getting some sleep.
How do you feel about justice being done today?
Justice was served.
Mr. Stern, you had a tough day when the video was first played in court. Could you tell us what you were thinking as you watched that confession that day? I saw you walk out.
Well, I just thought that my daughter, my only child, it was sickening. It's gut-wrenching, it's hurtful, and to think that somebody that pretended to be her friend actually did that to her, and without any remorse, and it's painful, it's sad, and it's beyond anything that I've ever experienced before in my life, and it's just horrible, very horrible.
How much of this will you be able to put behind you now?
Not much. Not much. It's hard. It's hard.
Have you thought about sentencing yet?
No, that's a couple months away, so we'll have more to say about that.
Beyond your trusting the prosecutors and the judicial system here, what else has gotten you through these last few years without your daughter, and knowing that the person who was ultimately held responsible for it might walk away?
Well, see all these people behind me? All these people, from the prosecutor's office to the Neptune City Police, Belmar, Neptune, the Sheriff's Department, and the entire prosecutor's office, they were all in on this, and they helped me get through it.
Mr. Stern, would you mind saying maybe a few more words about what your daughter
Sarah's up in heaven. She's an angel, and she was just a beautiful person. She never had she never.
Welcome back to CBSN New York. In the studio here, you were just watching a press conference given by prosecutors in Monmouth County, New Jersey. The jury there today finding 21-year-old Liam McAtasney guilty of murdering his childhood friend Sarah Stern. This was the second day of deliberations in Freehold. And what was important here, just one moment, the second day of deliberations, however, what was important here was to find out how the jury made their decisions. My goodness, one second. Hold with me here, hold with me. Okay, so second day of deliberations. The prosecution had argued in 2016 that McAtasney strangled Stern, who was 19 at the time, during a robbery at her house in Neptune City. The robbery seemingly based on some inheritance she was about to receive, thousands of dollars. McAtasney also charged with throwing her body off a bridge into a river in Belmar. At first, if you remember, back in December into January, it was a missing persons case when she could not be found, until someone, Anthony Curry, a young man, an acquaintance of McAtasney, you see there, went to police with a secret recording he did of McAtasney admitting to the murder. McAtasney's friend, also in this case, Preston Taylor, in a earlier trial, he admitted that he took part in the plot. He testified against McAtasney in exchange for a recommendation for a lesser sentence. Also, just how these people were related. Taylor went to a prom with Stern earlier, and Taylor also was McAtasney's roommate at one point. Before the verdict, the jury reviewed recorded conversation in which McAtasney talked about Sarah Stern's death. The jury reviewed that tape I told you about. The defense attorney called that tape an elaborate lie McAtasney told to impress an amateur horror filmmaker. Liam McAtasney was found guilty of murder, robbery, conspiracy, desecration of human remains, and hindering apprehension. He had earlier turned down a plea bargain, and elected to go to trial. Again, he was found guilty. It was interesting, too, to hear from Sarah Stern's father, whom we had heard from. I'm talking and doing this at the same time. We'd heard from earlier because he testified in the trial about his daughter. And today he also spoke about what a lovely girl she was, and that his only child, just a delightful young person, and that just putting it together that her friends, pretending to be her friends, would ultimately be responsible for her death. Only one day of deliberations. The whole process was about 8 weeks. And remember, just a couple of weeks ago, the judge, Superior Court Judge Richard English, there were some problems with a couple of jurors not following the rules. And so the defense tried to get the case thrown out, but Judge English said no. I think it was interesting, too, we heard from the prosecutors in the case, Megan Doyle, as well as Chris Decker, talking about over this long period of time since December of 2016, what really helped them in their prosecution was people, not only Curry, but other people coming forward. It's important to say that Sarah Stern's body was never found. So although her father, Michael Stern, talking about justice, this is justice, but we know the pain, of course, that will always be there over this entire tragedy. We're going to have continuing coverage of the verdict in Monmouth County. Again, 21-year-old Liam McAtasney found guilty on all counts in the murder of Sarah Stern. Coming up on CBS 2 News at 5 and 6, as well as right here on CBSN New York. Stay with us.